Hi, everybody. My name's Donna Rubin, and welcome to Mat Chat. This series was designed to get to know our yoga community just a little bit better. I've always been fascinated by what brings people onto their yoga mat, how yoga changes their lives, and where people are today with their yoga practice. So this little series that we're doing, we're going to meet so many people, some of which I've known for years, some new yogis, but the main thing is I want to hear your story. This segment is going to be called our Celebrity Yoga Teacher Series. So I am really excited to have as my first guest, Jimmy Barkan, my friend for so many years. And I'm just going to give you a little heads up why he's considered a celebrity yogi instructor, because Jimmy has been practicing yoga for over 40 years. He's been teaching for 41 years. He's had his own yoga studio in Fort Lauderdale for 39 years. And Jimmy was one of the only people that were actually allowed to lead hot yoga teacher trainings before Bikram Choudhury himself started official Bikram yoga teacher trainings in Los Angeles. So Jimmy has a wealth of experience. And not only that, he's going to be participating in our bode teacher training. And he was part of our first one that we did a few years ago before COVID. And now we are going to resume teacher training again, and he will be participating with us again. So I am really, really happy to have Jimmy with us here. And so we can start this conversation. So welcome, Jimmy.
Thank you for having me, Donna. It's definitely an honor to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So many people know the famous Jimmy Barkan. Well, now they're going to get to know you just a little bit better. So these are some of the questions actually that always interest me, which is actually just starting from the very beginning, which is, why did you even begin a yoga practice so many years ago? What brought you to even just the idea of taking yoga?
So I actually was a theater major at NYU, and I graduated their performing arts school. They called it Tisch. And on the curriculum, we had to do yoga, but the yoga that they had on the curriculum, this was 1975. I hate to date myself, but I am. 1975, we're doing yoga and we sitting in lotus position half the time. And I didn't like it. I couldn't even sit in lotus position. So it wasn't until then I moved to Los Angeles, but it wasn't until 1980 is when I met Bikram, and I was just looking for an exercise class. I found Bikram about a month after I'd been in Los Angeles, and it was a completely different experience. And I loved it right from the very beginning.
So it was basically you went into a yoga class more for the exercise of it at that time, right?
Yeah, I mean, the woman I was with at the time was my first ex-wife. Unfortunately, I numbered them. She actually found Bikram before me. So that she talked me into coming to the class. And I did, and I was skeptical, but Bikram, back then even, he was extremely charismatic. He was teaching right in Beverly Hills. So I was doing class next to Martin Sheen and Raquel Welch and Jill St. John and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Quincy Jones. So it was like starstruck yoga. And at the same time, I just loved the experience that it gave me. Every time I'd be driving home from class, I felt so amazing that I wanted to feel like that for the rest of my life. And that's what really got me going into yoga.
And what do you think? So you said the first experience with yoga, you weren't too excited about it. And then you found this hot yoga. How would you sort of describe the difference?
The difference was Bikram made the practice accessible I believe, for Western anatomy, especially for men. You'll see a lot more men in a Bikram school or a Bikram studio and a hot yoga studio than you will in other types of yoga, because the postures that he chose, which were beginning poses, were accessible to most people. At least they can do something in those positions and still get a tremendous experience and workout from it. So that's, I think, the big difference.
And also, what about the heat, though? I mean, that was sort of unusual, right?
It was, even back then. I mean, it wasn't quite as hot as it sort of evolved to be. It was about 95 to 100 back then, depending. If we had a lot of people in the room, it would boost up the humidity and it would get hotter, but it's averaged about 98 to 100. So it was still hot, and it was a completely different experience than most people were used to working out in a hot room. He just wanted to recreate the conditions of Calcutta, where he was from, where it was 105 degrees in the summertime with 100% humidity. So when he first moved to Japan to teach, he went from India to Japan, it was freezing cold. That's how they had the idea to start putting on the heat lamps and making the room hot. So that was a complete different experience.
Yeah, so the heat seems to just add a whole level of benefits that you can get by being in the hot room. Because I remember at the time when I first started yoga, I started at the Equinox gym, and it was freezing cold in the gym all the time. And so I never really felt that I could get sort of that deep into my stretching. So when I sort of, stumbled upon, actually, by the way, I stumbled upon this hot yoga in Florida as well, not at your studio though, in Hollywood, Florida, where I was on vacation, and my very first teacher was somebody that you actually trained.
Right.
So that's how, so that's how my experience kind of started. Also,
that's interesting. I forgot that. I remember you told me that years ago. I forgot about it. So I'm glad you reminded me.
Yeah, exactly. Now, how has your sort of yoga experience, you've been doing this for so many years, how has it sort of affected your whole life? What has yoga sort of done for you in your life?
Well, I was, like I said before, I was trying to be a singer and an actor, and that's why I was in New York, and then I moved to Los Angeles. And just after 8 years of having disappointments and all that rejection, and Bikram said to me, why don't you open up your own yoga school, be a yoga teacher? And that's where my life changed. So I was going to open a studio in Newport Beach, California, but my father was living in Boca Raton. He talked me out of it. He said, come to Fort Lauderdale, and you're going to have your cost of living is like half of what would have been in Newport Beach. And I opened my first studio on January 20th, 1983. So my whole life changed just by making that decision to now open a yoga studio. And when you're talking about the heat being different, that was a completely different experience. Here I am turning the heat on in South Florida, especially in the summertime. You have no idea the resistance I got from people. They just couldn't understand why I would do that. And I had conviction back then, but it's really tough. It's really tough.
But yoga in essence enabled you to make a transition from being a career that you were sort of hoping to have into a whole brand new career. So was it the actual practice of the yoga itself as you were practicing? Because you had mentioned to me that you used to practice 4 classes a day. So you were doing like heavy duty yoga. So did the experience of actually doing your yoga every day give you the strength, the focus, the ability to be able to actually completely turn your whole life around to becoming a studio owner?
Yeah, the discipline to doing, we did 3-4 classes a day for 2 years. That was my teacher training program. It was an apprenticeship program. So the discipline to do that is what really changed my life. I mean, we were just trying to keep up with Bikram standard. He would always talk about him doing 18 hours of yoga a day, and Bikram likes to exaggerate. So maybe it was 8 hours a day, but it was a lot of yoga. We were just trying to keep up to that standard. And there's only 3 of us in the training. And being able to do 3-4 classes a day and having the discipline to do that every single day. Saturday, we did 2 classes, and Sunday we took off. Bikram wasn't even open on Sunday. And when I first opened my studio, we weren't open on Sunday. That happened a little bit later as it got more popular. But yeah, the discipline to do that is what brought that into my life and changed it forever.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, as a yoga teacher, and considering you've been teaching for so many years, you've taught thousands and thousands of people, and you've also trained teachers as well. So what would you say was the most rewarding part of your experience as a yoga teacher?
So that's a good question. And I think you answered the question in 2 parts. The first half of my career, say the first 20 years of my career, was helping people as a yoga teacher to a yoga student and seeing transformations take place, inspiring people to go out and open their own yoga studios. But as a teacher, helping them as a student to progress and see these miraculous stories that would happen. People would have these amazing healings that would take place. The second half of my career, my purpose, my dharma sort of changed, and that was teaching other teachers, teaching people how to teach. So that was, and that's really what it's evolved now. So yeah, I mean, I still teach classes on a regular basis in South Florida, and I like it. And I do it for my membership. I have an on-demand membership, so I'm recording for the membership. So I'm teaching all the time. People have access to my classes, and I like that. But I love teaching teachers and inspiring them on their careers and going out and opening studios and teaching. And I've been doing that now all across the world, which is the most rewarding thing that I had. So like leaving my legacy across the world by inspiring other teachers.
So what we didn't mention was the fact that you were specializing in the hot yoga series, Bikram Yoga 26 and 2, whatever we want to call it. It has so many names at this point. And you were, specializing in that, having taken 4 classes a day with Bikram and just being with him all the time and learning as much as you could learn. And then at a certain point, you decided that you were going to rebrand yourself or move on and go to sort of a different, trajectory in your career.
Right.
So what made you, what made you change your sort of focus as a yoga teacher, or, without getting too, specific?
Well, yeah, and I still haven't shared that story yet, and because I have a YouTube channel, and I've been, we've done now 80 episodes in a row, and every single week for 80 weeks now, I haven't missed a week. So I still haven't shared the story to the world why Bikram and I split. So I'm not quite ready to do that now, but
let's not call it, just wait. Let's not call it a split. Let's call it that you had a transformation in your life that led you to pursue and go in a different direction.
That could be a good way of looking at it. That could be. And a lot of, also, Bikram was doing a franchise thing back at the time when I was, by the time I had my transition. So I was, even if I wanted to just eat the 26 and 2 postures, I almost couldn't because of certain lawsuits that were going on. But that being the case, I was never subjected to the 26 and 2 practice every day because I was doing Bikram's 91 posture advanced class every single day. So when I was doing 3 or 4 classes a day, one of those classes was the advanced class. So when I had my transition, not split from Bikram, I saw that I wanted to include different things in my practice and in my teachings. And that's really what inspired me to start doing things like upper dog and downward dog and revolving triangle, more upper body strength, more hip openers. And that's really where the transition came about.
And then what about your sort of transition or your kind of knowledge of meditation? And how do you see the meditative aspects of yoga come out of, let's say, a beginner yoga class like the hot yoga practice? Because, we don't really consider, or we don't really say that we're doing a meditation in a sense. Okay. Right. We say it's a moving meditation, things like that, but it's not called like a meditation practice, So you also explore other things in terms of meditation. And how do you see that as sort of bringing your yoga to the next level?
Well, you have to look at Paramahansa Yogananda for a second, because he's still very much part of what are the roots of hot yoga, the roots of our particular lineage. Paramahansa Yogananda was not just the guru, but the older brother of Bikram's teacher, of Bikram's guru, Vishnu Ghosh. And through his organization, Self-Realization Fellowship, they teach meditation techniques. 1983, March 30th, 1983, I was initiated into his highest level of meditation technique called Kriya Yoga. So I've been meditating since 1982, actually, was initiated in 1983, continued to then do my own meditation based on his teachings for the last 40 years. And it's funny you said that, because recently, and I think because of the pandemic, inspired people to now seek out more of the spiritual side of yoga. I just launched a meditation course, an 8-week meditation course And now, people are doing it from all over the world, which is pretty cool. So, but it's still connected to the lineage, but it's still separate from the asana practice. Even though it's interconnected, there's still a little bit of a separation, because you're really not meditating in that yoga room. And, we may call it a moving meditation, but I think it'd be semantically, you could say moving concentration. Meditation sort of goes to the no mind, where in the asana practice, you have to be in a very concentrated mind. So it's connected, but at the same time separate.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love the way you explain that. Absolutely. So now, we are going to be hosting our second teacher training starting in the fall. And maybe just tell us just a little bit in your own words, the couple of things that your focus is going to be on. Because we have a few guest teachers, which, I just love. And by the way, that's the one of the things that came out of the pandemic that was actually a positive, which is the whole ability to be able to, teach and take classes from people all over the world and do all these kind of Zoom things. So in actual fact, that became kind of a positive thing. So, yes. So I just want you to just give us a few words about your specialty, your special sauce. Now, I know you have a wide range and you can do your own teacher trainings, but you're going to come in and you're going to tell us a couple of the things that you're going to highlight for our teacher training.
Well, I think the main one is teaching teachers how to communicate in the class. It's what I call find your authentic voice, where most yoga teachers, when they first start out, they have what I call a teacher voice or a performance voice. And they speak in the way they think they're supposed to speak because they're trying to project their voice across the classroom. And sometimes, or most times, especially as a beginner, just learning how to get those words out, it becomes very robotic. So I teach people how to break that pattern, that robotic pattern of speech, and become authentic. And it really learn how to verbally explain to your students what it is you want to guide them to, opposed to just barking out bullet points, what Bikram would call the dialogue, even though it's really a monologue, but breaking that pattern so people can actually hear you and then take your teachings to heart and really make an impact and make a difference. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is the history and the philosophy, which became a passion of mine because of my leading teacher training program. So after the transition from Bikram, even though I was teaching teachers in the 80s, I was teaching Bikram teachers in the 80s, like you explained in the introduction. In 2003, I started my own teacher training program, and that inspired me to really become a student of the history and the philosophy. And now it's become a passion of mine, teaching people the transitions from the very beginning of yoga, which was 6,000 years ago, to the classical yoga, Patanjali, which was a big impact, to the post-classical of Matsyendra and Goraksha, which inspired Hatha yoga, which is what we do. So I take people through that whole timeline of history so that we understand where we're going and where we are by knowing where we came from.
I couldn't agree more that learning and exploring, the history, the philosophy, all of that it can enhance your yoga practice. And, it's one of these sort of lifelong learning, because honestly, we opened our studio in 1999, 24 years ago. And I've taken several teacher trainings, and I'm still pulling out books and still trying to understand what it is that I'm reading and trying to integrate it. And
always be the student.
Exactly. So, people who are going to come to our teacher training, they're going to get a broad range. They're going to get everything sort of that they can understand and explore. And then once they start their, path to becoming a teacher, they'll realize how much there really is to learn. So, anyway, so I'm super excited and I'm looking forward to this training, and thank you for talking with me. We could go on and on and on about so many things, I'm sure, and we'll do that another time. But it was really enjoyable to.
And thank you again for having me. Like I say, I'm humbled that you chose me for your teacher training programs, and thank you for having me on the chat. And I'll see you at the next training.
Absolutely. All right. Take care. Okay.
Bye, Donna.
Bye. Bye-bye.